Thanks for staying with us. So last week, Wednesday, the Federal Executive Council, FEC, approved a national language policy for the country. According to the Minister of Education, Malama Adamu, the policy would institutionalize teaching in primary schools in their mother tongue. Now, we discussed it a bit last week when we heard, but on the show we'll be having in very soon the Chairman House of Representative Committee on Basic Education and Services, Honorable Professor Julius O. Ihonvere. He'll be joining us soon. But before he comes in, I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, because I remember Nima saying very clearly that it was a great idea, but execution is a whole different ballgame. What are your thoughts on this, on the fact that this is being considered, and this is something that how effective do you think it will be? I don't like to. BC would like to let me let you start because.
Okay, so I personally like this. I think this is a step in the right direction. I've compared most superpowers, and I've seen that they start their instruction in their local language. I was saying recently to somebody that, have we noticed that in Africa we don't have science textbooks done in our local languages? All over the world, if you go to China, you go to Russia, you go to India, you go to some countries, you see that their science textbooks, their textbooks for schools are done in their local languages. And it gives the children a proper understanding of those concepts. And that's why they are able to build technology that the world is using. But the only thing we have in our local languages is the Bible. In different local languages. We don't have textbooks in local languages. So this, for me, is sort of a deliberate attempt to keep Africa in the dark, where we are focusing on religion. We are forgetting how to build things that will make our lives easier and put us on that platform. So this, for me, is like a wake-up call. Nigeria is now saying, let us do this mother tongue instructions in primary school. And people have been saying, okay, which mother tongue now will you pick? We have different, languages, different ethnic groups. Which one would you pick? I would say that if I want to believe that there will be proper planning for this. It's going to take a long time, and the Minister of Education has also said it. There'll be proper planning in such a way that each center, whatever dominant language is spoken in that center, will be the language that will be taught in school. So if, for instance, I move to Lagos State, I should be okay. We're talking about being one Nigeria. I should be okay for my children to understand Yoruba as the local language in this. And if I don't like it, I can move back to Delta State so that they understand maybe is Yoruba or Igbo or whatever dominant language is spoken in that place. That way, we're able to build a one Nigeria, not just for the academic purpose, but then everybody can, because when you're filling forms, they don't say which mother tongue language do you speak. They ask you what languages do you speak. Let me leave it here for now.
Okay. I thought you finished it.
I'd not finished anything.
I was born in Lagos, and I come from
Yoruba passos.
Both. No, I learned Yoruba in the university. I've said it. I read Yoruba through childhood. I had A's in Yoruba, but I couldn't speak it as fluently as I do now until I was in university, and I learned it because of couscous and gossip. But I remember in primary school, my parents had this exact clash, because the federal government at the time had issued a language policy thing where they were advising schools to teach in languages. So 3 compulsory languages were issued in my school then: Igbo, Hausa, and Yoruba, in primary school then. Because of this difficulty, my parents opted, just as you said, for the Yoruba language which was spoken here. All my Alawiye books and so there was this public policy book my dad brought home. It was written in Yoruba. I struggled to read it and find interpretation. I remember that struggle. I remember in secondary school, when I wanted to pick the Hausa language, there was no Hausa teacher available in secondary school, because it was still compulsory for us to take a Nigerian language, Igbo, Hausa, and Yoruba. There was an Igbo teacher available, there was a Yoruba teacher available, but I wanted to do Hausa deliberately because I felt, it was more common, and it was, a language of preference for me at the time. But there was no Hausa teacher available, and the Igbo teacher was always calling us Anumanu, Anumanu. I found out it was animal.
Anumanu.
So we opted for Yoruba, not because the Yoruba teacher was so pleasant to. She was also cursing all the time. But then it was the language I had learned over time, and it was the language available in the region. So there's so many things. I love this policy. God knows I do. But I have been through being born from parents from a different native, born in a state, a different state, forced to learn. And throughout school, then even my language, I was learning it from home as a thing. So here is my concern: if a parent of a Sakot descent like mine, and they teach their children or they speak at home a particular language, they are struggling to pass to their children because they're raising them in a different environment where the language is not well spoken, and they take that child to school, can they insist on the language of mother tongue for that child to learn? Because there's this clash for me. When I was speaking Esako at home, I would get to school, teachers would speak in English, my neighbors would speak Yoruba. For a long time, I was a quiet child. Me, that I'm a bubbly person, up until I got to secondary school. I'll be looking like this. I want to communicate, but there was this clash. You go to Ileke, Afa will speak Yoruba. You come home, my mom will insist, I don't understand English, until you speak the Esako language. And my father, who was even lenient to speak English. So there was this clash and confusion. How exactly do we plan to effect this? When it is an intertribal marriage, when it is a different environment, all of these dynamics, because we must have it neatly done. The way my parents sorted it out was a lot of deliberate work, buying the books, doing the exposure themselves. What is the federal government policy? How is it going to be implemented?
Let me bring in our guests.
Have we foreseen these clashes? What are we doing to take care of them?
Okay, let me bring in our guests. I'm told that Honorable Professor Julius Ihovere, OON, member representative O1 Federal Constituency, is on the phone with us. Good morning, sir. Hello, sir. Hello, sir. Okay, we're having connection issues. So let me come and hear your thoughts on this issue. Do you agree with it, and do you think it's a good idea at this time?
I think that one of the challenges we're already experiencing it and will continue to have is a sense of identity or a lack of strong identity. And one of the ways that we can strengthen identity is through language, There's this poet that poem went viral, and she spoke about how people don't curse me for my mother tongue. It is unique, it is different, and it is a beautiful thing that we should encourage. Of course, BC has spoken about the challenges and the opportunities. I also feel like it's interesting when I get to meet an Igbo person who said, I was born in Zaria, I speak Hausa fluently, and then now he's in Lagos. I'm like, this is so beautiful. Sweet. Because your name is Igbo, you grew up in the north, and you could speak the language. And I think that's the beauty it must happen. Wherever you grow up, you should understand, you should be able to communicate with people that are there. And even the children psychologically can learn 3 languages, multiple, simultaneously without any stress. So we should let children expand in true sense what they have capacity to do. And it will also generate employment, because people go to university to study Yoruba and they don't have jobs. They end up being in the bank or end up as administrators somewhere. So if you go and study Yoruba or go and study Igbo, you should be able to further that knowledge you have gotten and put it into human beings. Then morals are stronger in our native language.
Yeah.
There is the way you will say it, there are some proverbs that there's no way to say it in English. It is just better in Yoruba. Strong proverbs that go deep into our subconscious to help us understand the things that English cannot help us communicate.
Yeah.
So I believe that as a nation, dealing with identity crisis, dealing with corruption, building a more unified system, we need to go back into our language.
All right, so let me bring in our guest, because I have a few questions for him also. Honorable Professor Julius Ihovere, welcome, sir. Are you there?
I'm here. Thank you very much.
Good to have you on the show. So this issue that we're discussing, the fact that they're trying to institutionalize local language teaching in our primary schools, do you agree with it? And do you think the modalities will be put right to execute this properly?
Thank you very much. First is to commend the federal government and the relevant ministry for thinking through this issue at this time. Nothing could be better in terms of trying to get our children to begin to understand and learn and communicate in their local languages. However, I have my doubts. As Chairman House Committee on Basic Education, we have no knowledge about the processes that led to this announcement. this is the problem in the country. People are not carried along. Stakeholders are not carried along. I don't know what level of consultation they have gone through. I'm not aware that the existing languages that they want to be now deployed have been adequately studied and reduced into writing at a level that they can be used for instruction. I am also not aware that they have identified the relevant institutions that will be in charge of developing these languages, ensuring that they are deepened and expanded to cover much more than the English language can communicate. Thirdly, I am not aware that as of today, they have even made any effort to recruit and train instructors and teachers in the local languages that will be used to teach these children. And even that they have carried parents and communities along so that they can even have informal or non-formal teachers in the communities that are well-versed in the local languages that could assist the teachers that have been so trained. So I just hope it is not one of those announcements designed to make people happy that government wants to bring our local languages in. So it's like putting the cart before the horse.
Exactly
again.
what I was going to say.
The background investigations, the background consultations, the background trainings, the background development of manuals and curricula, and even instructional materials also have come first. Without that, this is just going to end up in the usual announcement.
Exactly.
So for me as a committee, it's a good idea. It's long overdue, but I do not think we've put in place the appropriate institutional and other instructional requirements to make sure it is a success.
I think I can't agree with you more. I think because I was actually going to say exactly those words. You can put in the cart before the horse, because many people migrate around the country. You know, if we all kind of if we stayed within our own zones and you learn your language and develop your community, it's more impactful. But somebody learns their language, for example, maybe Isako. You learn how to do biology, chemistry, everything in Isako. You now relocate to the north at some point, and then you are confused on how to even do anything. So though the modalities is not clear, so it's nice announcements are great, but how do you execute a whole different ballgame?
Can I ask a question? So I know that Nigeria has a penchant for putting the cart before the horse, but Nigerians themselves are not patient people. This is something that will take years to do. Can we calm down and begin to ask the right questions, which is, one of them is, how will they pick a dominant language in a state? Because I know that in every local government or every state has different languages, different ethnic groups. How will they select the right language? And if the federal government selects the right language, how do we support them to ensure and not feeling like we are marginalized? We are people that you find it difficult to please Nigerians. So you say, because you did not speak my own, I will not speak your own. It's not possible. Go and study other countries, how they decided and picked on one language from each community, which they stand out with. So if you are asking the federal government to do your job, which is help you teach your children the language, if you decide to relocate to another place, your children will learn the language of that place. Okay, and that makes us total Nigerians. So sir, I think, or do you think that we Nigerians are not patient enough to allow the federal government to fine-tune this?
On the contrary, my sister, I think we are patient. It is the government that creates the problems for us. Take, for instance, people blame us for going on strike. But it is the government that told them to go on strike when it refuses to keep up with its own agreement. The same thing here. We have not set up a process at all to engage the general public, the communities and constituencies on the issues that the government wants to address, on why this is important. And like you rightly said, you can find some local governments, even some communities with about 8, 9, 10 languages.
Pick one.
Which one are we going to pick?
That's the
How do
question
we
I'm looking
convince
for.
the others that are sub-languages, even sections of sub-languages, to say everything in your language is included in this one? So let us use this. It is not designed to dominate you. It is designed to expand the process of learning for your child. These conversations are not taking place at all. So I have my doubts that the government really knows what it is doing or what it is doing and really wants to do it.
I think the major problem for me is families already leaving their mother tongue for, for the English language. Because a child must even have a mother tongue from home. And most children now these days, they start with calling their mommy, mommy, instead of mama or any other language. So how do we determine the mother tongue? Even from home now, let's leave the regionalities and all the ethnicities. Do you agree, sir?
No, I agree completely with you. We are losing the language, particularly those of us who migrated, moved to the city, etc. Those who have gone abroad, it is very expensive to have people come over to teach your children. So I believe that this issue is very, very important to help us reclaim what we have lost and what we are losing. But so as not to create crisis and conflicts and even battles within communities, there are steps that ought to be taken. And I think the government immediately should set up maybe a language commission, encourage it in different states and local governments with clear mandates of what they should be doing, so that they can begin to address the fundamental issues, so that we don't, as usual, begin to address the symptoms of the problem rather than the causes. We don't begin to pursue the superstructure and neglect the substructure where the contradiction is.
All right, thank you very much.
I agree completely.
Yeah, let me let you go at this point, because I think you totally you've been able to help us understand that the federal government obviously are not prepared for this great idea. So we're still discussing these languages, and I mean, many of these countries that we talk about, many of them have one language. Some of them have evolved over the years. We are struggling with over 300 languages, and it's a difficult choice, because you say, let them decide. Who is them? We're government. We put yourself in the person that's going to decide. Put your mind on that person. How is that person going to decide which language to pick? It's a difficult decision. So it's a good idea, but execution is a whole different ballgame, because there are human beings going to decide, not robots. So when we put it in that perspective, does it make sense at this time? Do you think it's a decision we should have taken years ago? Now we're all speaking Pidgin or English. Should we find a common ground with Pidgin English across? But what are your thoughts? Let me come to Tokwe first, and then I'll come to you, because I know you want to talk first. Let me come to Tokwe. Your thoughts on this?
So I think that there's never going to be a right time to do, a wrong time to do the right thing. It's something that we should have inculcated right from time. I look at India especially, and I'm really impressed about how, despite our own excuse of colonialism, they managed to hold on to their culture consistently over the years, even when they relocate. And so that's why, even if it looks like the government didn't think this, it doesn't look like they thought it through when they made that decision. It's a good decision, and sometimes you will lead with the vision and everybody would rally around to conform. Languages, we have several languages in the country, and I know that we feel like Pidgin is a neutral ground for everyone to, all of us to just conform. But I also think that I don't agree with it. Let me just put it that way, because Pidgin has different shades. Pidgin in Wari is different from Pidgin in Yoruba, and Pidgin in the North is different from Pidgin everywhere. So let's just learn our true language, the one that is our own. Let's not pseudo-English. Let's not create a pseudo-English. Let's learn Igbo, let's learn Yoruba, let's learn Hausa, let's learn Tiv, let's learn whatever language we can learn, and start creating awards for that category. BC said something about religion being democratized to the point where everybody, no matter where you are, you can understand your religion. But we haven't done that academically to ensure that you can understand your academic, whichever language you need to use to get it. So I think it is a really, really right direction. We'll keep on fleshing it out as we grow.
So one of the things I do is to look at the solution and now not give myself 100 reasons why it will not work. It's not going to start and then everything is, fantastic at the beginning. We will face challenges, but like they said, it's just for primary 1 to primary 6, which at that time, those kids are not even supposed to be doing anything meaningful in school. It's just about interaction and all that. The way they do it outside the country, we're always looking at international best practices. But in our nursery too, we want them to read from 1 to 200, which meanwhile, they're cramming that subject. So if we come down to having those local languages, I used to ask myself a question. I said, how did they select? So in Igbo language, there's an official Igbo language. How did they come to that selection? How did they select this particular? There are several dialects in Igbo language, but they have one that you write and you read and you pass in exams. Yoruba has one that is official. The Hausa language has an official one. So if they can select it for the major languages, why can't they select one in her community as the official? So the problem I see is because we are not united in nature, everybody wants to be the head, nobody wants to be the tail. If you come to Delta State, for instance, and you say because of the population in Delta State, probably the Urobos are more, and we pick Urobo to be the dominant local language for that place. Why will I, an Asaba person, be quarreling that they did not pick Asaba? No, I don't mind having my children speak Urobo, because the only question you get is how many languages do you speak? So let's focus on that.
I get that. That's valid. But you see, as we evolve, you see, in the past, 20, 30 years ago, certain tribes hadn't really evolved to the point where they are visible today. When we were growing up, it was Yoruba, Igbo, Hausa. Yes. When I was a child, I didn't know anything else until I started growing up. I started hearing of Urobo, Isako. I'm hearing it for the first time because I'm growing up into it. So communities will begin to develop.
It's where you grow up.
I'm telling you, you understand. The point is, as communities grow, they will challenge that. Why did you pick that language?
Because we're not united.
No. It's a natural evolution. Because as you grow, the same way Africa now is evolved. There was a time they came slavers to pick us. And now, we are now evolving. We're saying, no, you know what? You can't be the world leader anymore. We also are a world leader because we are evolving. So the natural evolution of people will develop to the point where,
I wanted to just say,
they can respond to both of us
So
together,
the Chinese have a major language, and you have some minority languages struggling to remain a language. They're saying, do not wipe us extinct. So you will have that. In the Esako languages, there are too many. I remember growing up, the Fugas, they speak different. But there was a major, they were evolving to the point they had major similar numbers, similar money. They had a currency before these slave buyers came and started to tell us that our currencies, our monies were not the same as that in England. And they converted it to gunpowder, human beings, and all of that. So they stunted us. But if we give ourselves time, we will get there. What is important is what BC said. The developmental stage of a child is in primary school. Let that child understand the most important thing, which is to speak something that is cultural. And there's no culture without language.
Yeah.
Every culture has a language. I want to support Tokwe that we cannot have a form of pidgin as any form
I don't
of
even
language.
agree, yeah.
But let us have a language that everybody would understand. By now, if they have left us, I will understand Igbo. You will understand Yoruba. We will understand each other. We just might choose not to speak it as what we inherited.
Absolutely.
But we will understand it if we have left ourselves. But that choice of English language is affecting every other available opportunity to
I've been in
develop.
proponent of this for years.
Yes.
You know, from day one, I always talked about this. I believe that we should actually resort to a local language. But it's one thing to have a great idea, it's another thing to totally execute. We have to wrap up.
Yeah.
That's all we can take on today's show.